Like to call to order the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners meeting for April 22nd, 2015. Special meeting at 10 a.m. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
Move approval.
Now I got a motion and a second. Are there any further discussion to the motion that's on the floor? Are there any citizen comments to the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, hearing none, those in favor of the motion vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Manager.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Been waiting 5 months for this day, and I'm here to talk about public purpose and sponsorship at government-owned facilities. I want to keep my comments brief because I have a 6 p.m. Dinner reservation, so I'm going to have to move quickly through the agenda. No.
Can't laugh, that's a joke, y'all.
Yeah, we got it.
Just hoping it's a joke.
Because you'll be standing here by yourself.
The only hope.
No, this is the opportunity for your manager to kind of give the first view of his first 5 months on the job as your county manager. But first, this is April 22nd, and it is the 45th anniversary of Earth Day. And I just want all of you to think what you were doing 45 years ago. Commissioner Hutchinson and I were waiting for the next year's draft to see if we were going to Vietnam. And I don't believe either one of us ended up going there, and the rest of you were in various other age brackets, and maybe you don't remember that day quite so much. And with that, happy 45th anniversary of Earth Day. It is my pleasure, Commissioners, to deliver this looking forward report. I'm going to try and stay on script. There is a lot of information before you. There are, I think, 13 or 14 backup items. There was one that was just added this morning that was an enhancement to one of your backup items to be incorporated into your large ring binder. And in many ways, this report represents my first kind of 30,000-foot view of Alachua County government, its operation, and quite frankly, its budget needs, because I come from a school of thought that budgeting is not something you do once a year. It's really it's a constant year-round process and a review. And certainly, this is not intended to be a budget message, because that message will be coming very shortly. But if the budget is actually the meal, this is the hors d'oeuvre, this is the appetizer. This will kind of give you a view, because quite frankly, I've really been blessed with the people that I'm surrounded with. I have great department directors and managers. I don't see any whole-scale change that's needed. I think that you'll find that my comments are more evolutionary rather than revolutionary. So hopefully my subject matter experts sitting behind me are starting to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that we're all in this together. This report has been a collaborative effort with my department directors and managers, and they have authored quite a bit of this. Now, mind you, they may have written the words, I edited them then, and they became my words, so I'm the one that's responsible for the report. But not only do I want to thank my department directors and managers, but quite frankly, I'd like to give a special thanks to Mark Sexton, Gina Peebles, and Sean McClendon, because I am sure they've gone out and purchased Cupid dolls in my shape and have been poking it regular. Many topics covered this morning. In most cases, these topics will actually reappear. This is not a request from your manager to adopt policies today. This is your manager's recommendation on items that should be placed on an agenda at a later date with significant staffing, when we can answer all of the questions, because the staffing will be combined with the item. And then the policymakers can do what they do best, and that is deliberate and then make policy. The report's a compilation of board directions, at least 2 retreats, one that we studied and one that I participated in. initiatives of the county departments and observations, again, of this organization over my first 5 months at the helm. You know, when applying for the job, I was struck by the background document that I think you've all seen, because quite frankly, it wouldn't have been placed if at least 4 of you that are sitting on the dais hadn't approved it. And I really, when I came into the position, you review a lot of information. And I had to make sure that what your priorities were, I had to recognize those as my priorities. And there were actually 5 things that this document challenged your new manager to do. And they were, there's never enough money to do everything that needs to be done. There's a need to balance the desires of the conservationists with those of the business community. And I could probably debate the word balance, but these are the words that were in that report. The county's infrastructure needs work. I've heard that a couple of times. Some fence mending needs to be done between the city of Gainesville and the county. And Mr. Clerk, I would suggest that it's not just the fence that we had to move 3 feet over so you could walk from your building to this building. It's not the Bo Diddley fence, it's a relationship building, and I think we're on track to definitely have a great working relationship with our friends and colleagues across the street. And finally, because of the upcoming generational shift, staff and succession planning is critical. There are 3 or 4 pages of my employees that are in the drop program. That means that in 5 years or less, they will leave county employment. But the advertisement also said this is a great opportunity for the manager to build his own team, as it were. So my thoughts and reflections on this report started my review of the Alachua County process. Many of these items that are listed in this looking forward to a sustainable future report are in your comprehensive plan. We started out making references back and forth to different places in the comprehensive plan, and that became its own project. So what I would suggest is, as we bring items back for policy discussion, that very predominant document, probably the largest document that you do over a long-term basis, we'll start to cite those references on where it gives credibility and credence to what those policy recommendations would be. And then I will look forward to bringing progress reports forward to the board and anything that we view as new opportunities in the budget process and the policy deliberations. A little on the report structure. The report opens with a quick summary of the 4 items that were discussed at your December 2014 board retreat, and all 6 of us were at that. And those items were items that originated literally on my watch. Then we move on to 2 broad, important principles, that of sustainable stewardship and advocating Alachua County, 2 terms that I'll return to regularly. Sustainable stewardship speaks to our foundational focus on sustainability in everything we do. Advocating Alachua County is a program that will help us better define ourselves in the community, as well as provide information on both the what and the why of everything we do. And these broad principles will become the foundation of a rebranding effort that I'm going to recommend. Finally, I will focus on the 5 strategic issue areas that were the product of your March 2014 strategic planning workshop. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cornell and I were not at that. Well, I wasn't at the workshop. Maybe Commissioner Cornell was, but at least 4 of you adopted those as policy, and I would suggest that when you're looking at long-term change in an organization, just a year ago wasn't that long ago. And they were natural resources, including the environmental protection focus, infrastructure and capital improvements, economic opportunities, and the human capital component of that, which I use the term collaborative caring, public safety, and governance. And so I'll go through in that order in the report. In December 2014, the board talked about land and water conservation. We were talking about Amendment 1, which had just been passed. We talked about transportation because 60% of the citizens said that find the money somewhere else, I believe, and I've talked to all of you on that, and I've got 6 or 7 different reasons on why we ended up with 39.97% affirmative vote on the transportation initiative. And I felt that my marching orders were to find some money for transportation. The digital divide, and we've got some great news that came through, was just handed to me today, and I know that's been an initiative that many of you have brought to my attention. And then the creation of the Administrative Services Director position, and I'm happy to report that just 3.5 weeks ago, Gina Peebles started in that position. So hopefully so many things that were falling through the cracks from my perspective will cease. This report will contain items that we're working on with our federal and state contract lobbyists, and we're going to talk about some constructive funding initiatives to address our pressing transportation challenges. The East Side Wi-Fi agreements with the city of Gainesville are being finalized, but yet I have an update as of 30 minutes ago. Kevin Smith, your ITS director, showed me the signed contracts, so congratulations to the commission. Something that was frustrating you just a few months ago. Now we will be lighting up 3 community centers on a trial basis with 4 more to come. So I think that digital divide just became lower and narrower. And with that, if I can move into sustainable stewardship. And what I call sustainable stewardship has been an important and involving value of Alachua County government since 1999. With the formation of the Alachua County Sustainability Projects Ad Hoc Committee. It continued with the Energy Conservation Strategies Commission in 2008. And then in 2015, the board directed me to create a Sustainability Council to review and implement energy, water, and waste initiatives.
Sorry, we're running into a little technical difficulty.
Really?
Okay, is it working now?
Okay, well, we're all working. We have updates now on the from the February 24th, 2015 board direction. You approved the formation of the Alachua County Sustainability Council. These are 12 folks that are, it's a council chaired by Sean McClendon, who used to be your sustainability coordinator. Now a good portion of his job responsibility is directed towards our sustainability initiatives. The board will receive the council's first full report in July, but actually, that's what they tell me. But I would like to bring that forward at the second meeting in June so clear policy direction can be given as we go into the FY 2016 budget discussion. So to the great employees that are on the Sustainability Council, let's bring it forward by the middle of June. And the update will provide an overview of all previous actions assigned, results obtained, and goals for the next quarter. So hopefully it will be an action report. That first quarterly report will be a baseline report on energy, water, and waste initiatives. Key sustainability initiatives, and again, this will be a coming agenda item, the Resource Recovery Park. Private sector remanufacturers are being recruited to the East Side location, and that will support approximately 300 green-collar manufacturing jobs. Land conservation and ecologic corridors. You know, I really like the ecologic corridors. A lot of these things are referenced in your comp plan about width and length, and I think we have some great tracts of land. I think the connectivity lacks, and I think accessibility is really important to our citizens so they can get into the public property that they own. They protect our habitat and our green infrastructure in the near term, and I think the strategic connection of these resources is important. Then solar initiatives, and when we talk about some of our sustainability initiatives, I think a lot about the opportunities for solar. We've had several board discussions on that particular item, and I will be bringing forward a couple of items. I'm going to be recommending that once the public defender moves to her new location that we sell prime real estate. I have a firm belief that with the exception of the public's building, this particular building, I think government services belong one block off of main commercial corridors, and I will be recommending that we sell the public defender's building on Main Street. I would recommend that those proceeds go into board priorities, namely one that I will recommend to you will be a solar project at the 515 building location, one over the parking lot and one onto the roof. So that's an early offering to the policymakers that I intend to bring that item forward. That the money that the building brings will cover those and allow money for other board priorities or whatever the board should so desire. The existing materials recovery facility, the board had this discussion back in December or January, and December 2nd, and the board directed staff to assume the operation. So by the end of 2016, we'll have to take a look if we're going to put that back out on the street or whether, and hire a private entity, or whether we continue operating the facility. So that story is yet to be told. And then conservation and efficiency improvements for the county buildings. Will continue to bring forward capital projects with energy reduction and water conservation measures. One of the big issues that we're talking about with water conservation is, quite frankly, our elimination of irrigation on county public property and sod reduction plans for county government. And we're talking about perennial edible landscapes. If we can just get a lunch truck right next to that, our board meetings can go on forever and we'll still be famously nourished. Advocating Alachua County, moving into the next topic. Alachua County does an impressive job communicating with our citizens through a variety of mediums. Mark Sexton reminds me of this constantly, and we do a great job. But unfortunately, we're associated with all other government, and there's a stigma associated with that. And we're not immune to that stigma. Therefore, I'm recommending we make a concerted effort to reinvest in who we are by focusing on telling our stories, transparency, our image in the community, public perceptions, and accessibility to the government that our citizens pay for. This will be accomplished by developing departmental business plans. This is where I paused to listen to the groans from the people behind me, rebranding ourselves, monitoring the impacts of proposed state and federal bills on our citizens, reinvesting in communications, and emphasizing our community and customer service ethics. I see a lot of signs about customer service ethics around here, and I just want to refocus on that. Developing departmental business plans will be a great guiding tool for the commission as they give policy direction and guidance, and for the manager, because quite frankly, as I had said, any changes are going to be incremental. Once we have business plans that we can review, they will help our 2017 budget deliberations, because at that point in time we'll be able to see who's doing what and is there an overlap that can be reasonably addressed. So I think that we'll be able to identify quantifiable, if we can count it. And Mr. Chair, I see you shaking your head. There have been several discussions, I know, on different services that are provided around the community, and the board saying, where's the business plan? And I'm going to suggest that Alachua County government, through its departments, will have within a year business plans that will be meaningful and helpful and useful tools as we guide the future of Alachua County working together. With the business plans, we will be able to assign the priorities and objectively evaluate budget requests and individual and departmental performance. We had a great presentation yesterday from Susan Myers. 2 weeks ago, Chief Northcutt gave us a great presentation on 2 respective departments. I will reference them a little later on in this report, but quite frankly, I think that greatly detailed review of our departments is an extremely beneficial business approach to how we provide government services. I want to talk a little bit about rebranding Alachua County. We are a progressive, caring, and a diverse community, and our logo or our brand should reflect that. We have in your report, I think there are 6 or 7 different logos that we've had over the past, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. I think it might have started 25 years ago, introduced 25 years ago. But our brands and the public's perceptions of that brand, they change over time. And I'm going to suggest that the new logo should reflect that Alachua County is progressive and forward-thinking, communicating the importance and value of Alachua County to the citizens we serve. It should be developed with input from our staff and, quite frankly, make sure that we have plenty of citizen stakeholder input. It should be easy and inexpensive to reproduce on printed materials, vehicles, buildings, and for other authorized uses, because I think we need to be extremely proud of the Alachua County brand, and I think we need to be ready to tell that story to the citizens on what that brand represents to them. In-house communication staff may be finalized, utilized to finalize the logo in lieu of hiring an outside firm, and the desired urgency of the commission to proceed forward with this initiative. I also believe in the legislative process. I think it was Will Rogers said that, well, I'll modernize. He said no person is, or their pocketbook is safe as long as the legislature is in session. And we have apparently a longer time to be unsafe because it looks like the legislative session will go into overdrive, or at least overtime. But we have a great state lobbyist. We have a great federal lobbying firm. We have people on our staff that are excellent at the legislative initiatives. And quite frankly, all 5 of you have been heavily involved in your own lobbying efforts, whether you served in the state legislature or an FAC committee, or just quite frankly traveling many times to folks in Tallahassee. So quite frankly, we'll continue to encourage the board's extensive involvement in the legislative process. I probably won't recommend raising taxes, but I absolutely want our fair share to come back from Tallahassee and Washington, and I quite frankly don't think that's happening. Reinvesting in communications, you can't do that enough. The Alachua County Communications Office provides a unified and consistent message through a variety of media outlets, including streaming video, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Channel 12, Flickr, media advisories, and the community update newsletter, Take 5, and Alachua County Talks. So Mark, you and your team are doing a lot, and I read it exactly how you wrote it. Communications will continue its emphasis on expanding our social media reach, and I challenged them to reach out even further. I'm told that 28,000 Facebook likes is a lot, and I asked them by the end of 2016, I want 35,000 likes. So we'll be working on that. I think it is a great, we miss a whole generation if we're not using social media. Website evolution. We have a great website. It's been redesigned. There are a couple of things that I would suggest that we add to the website. Another way to engage our citizens is by simply simplifying the search engines on the Alachua County website to include an I want to know function. We could index keywords and frequently search words for relevance so that we can direct citizens to the services they need. And another addition to the county website is an I want to do business in Alachua County. I think that would, especially since we have a great business and economic growth action plan with its revisions, and that would certainly lead our citizens to the appropriate growth management, economic development information sites. And finally, I've been out in the community a lot. It's never enough, but I would suggest that we also add an Ask Advise the County Manager page, which would allow citizens to inquire or suggest items of interest to the county manager for response or, quite frankly, implementation, things that we hadn't thought of. Other than in-house staff time, I don't think this initiative is going to cost us any more money. Organizational culture, the community and service ethics. You know, we have a great, it's on all of our stuff. It's on the report. An organization's mission, vision, and values create and define the personality of the organization. That personality can be a positive reflection of day-to-day business ideals of this organization, or it can be a negative reflection created by not exhibiting the very priorities and items of importance that we say that we're all about. How do we as a value-driven, high-performance organization instill a customer service focus? The answer is in what we establish as our organizational culture. Consistent with our mission, vision, and values, we are committed to providing those services at the highest level possible and operating under a continuous improvement cycle on how we provide those services. Our organizational culture will be the basis for our daily work, the basis for our interactions with the public, and the basis for our interactions with each other. To reach this goal, Alachua County staff will be solution-oriented. We need to make sure we're listening to problems and concerns and issues of those that we serve, then seek and offer solutions. If yes, I can't help you, or yes, I can help you as a response, that's great. Or yes, if we do this, I can help you. I think that's also an appropriate response to good customer service. I think we need to be more proactive and reach out personally to individuals. And we need to every day meet or exceed our citizens' expectations on the services that they are expecting from their government. And I'm a firm believer that a conversation is better than an email, and an email is better than a letter, unless those are required. I think the personal touch of the voice and being compassionate and understanding of the inquiry is appropriate. And then be innovative. Hopefully, the proverbial thinking outside of the box, I will challenge my staff to really take a look at everything we do on a what if we did this differently. And I think that would introduce the opportunity by adding thought to the process of what we do. And we absolutely need to have open minds to different ideas. And we need to work with a sense of urgency. We need to start things when we say we're going to start them, and we need to finish things when we say we're going to finish them. And our sense of urgency doesn't mean that we're going to just be delivering something fast, because fast is like cheap. That means you may have to do it all over again. We need to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time. And we need to work with urgency by answering phones on the third ring. I call in and the phone rings on and on and on, and then I finally get, it cycles a couple of times. And this has happened a few times. I'm not indicting anything, but we need to answer our phones by the third ring, and we need to return our calls and our emails within 24 hours, and the response needs to be accurate and not get passed on from one person to another person. My background leads me extensively to the next subject area, and that's natural resources and environmental protection. You know, Alachua County is known statewide, nationally, and internationally for its unique natural environment. The County Commission has acknowledged the value of our natural resources and has adopted policies to protect the environment for future generations. I have no doubt whatsoever in my career experience that probably what we offer in the natural resource landscape is what drives people to a location. It's a major component in quality of life. And with that thought process comes a stewardship, and that's the need to consider the economic needs of the community. However, we need to, the environment and the job creation initiatives must work hand in hand without compromising either to create a truly sustainable community. By focusing on both of these, Alachua County will continue to lead in protecting the environment while encouraging a vibrant economy. To reach this goal, staff will evaluate the establishment of an impact-appropriate clean water stormwater utility. They will investigate and evaluate that, but my research has indicated that this is an item that I would like to bring forward as a policy discussion at a later board meeting with appropriate staffing. I think it will not only adequately fund the maintenance of stormwater infrastructure, but will provide a funding source for matching state and federal grants for environmentally significant and beneficial projects. The appropriate assessment will recognize the significant stormwater impact of the urban and suburban land use forms and the minimal impact of agricultural lands. I know there was some discussion in the past on a stormwater, clean water utility fee, and I think it was disproportionately negative towards agricultural properties. I believe that we have the appropriate response to those concerns. We need to expand the service nature of environmental protection staffing efforts by providing policy and consultative guidance to groups, to various governments at the state and federal level. Quite frankly, I think we're the experts, and quite frankly, some of our smaller communities, probably 8 of the 9, could probably use our expertise in helping to guide some of their work, so I think we can always provide a consulting guide without actually doing their work for them. And we need to evaluate opportunities to leverage dollars and also utilize in-kind services to leverage for matching land and water conservation dollars from agencies such as the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and the water management districts. Quite frankly, in a lot of the applications I've worked on with the water management districts, there's a part in the application process that basically says, do you have a stormwater utility fee? If you don't check that, you get probably a pleasant review and not much more, because they want to, the water management districts, in my analysis, they want to see what your level of commitment is, or are you just asking for money? And we're well on our way to having our finalized landscape irrigation code to improve efficiency of ground landscape irrigation systems with the goal of reducing discretionary water usage. I think probably reducing water usage in this particular area, I could have talked about this in the sustainability area, but quite frankly, it's a lot like a no-kill facility. When you reach 90%, or our recycling goal is 75%, that's considered to be as good as you can get. And I think if we need to be in that literally no water phase or range of accomplishment. And I think if we can't just tell our citizens one thing and then do something else when we talk about preserving that which we have very little of. If I can move into economic opportunities and the human capital area, or a term that I use, collaborative caring. Alachua County holds a passion for our environment as well as a tremendous potential for economic development. Our goal should be to recognize both community attributes and to be the state and national leader in finding the sustainable balance and solution. Environmental protection and economic development, in my opinion, do not have to be mutually exclusive. Efforts to support economic development include, and we've had two extensive board meetings, so I won't go in a lot of detail, but I think the first report that I saw had some sections that certainly were missing. I think with a lot of the comments that came from the commission, I think this revised plan is an excellent plan. I'll certainly have copies of this, Mr. Chair, when we're in California starting on Sunday. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And this is attached just as reference, because my goal in the thick binder that you all had is we talk about a lot of things and then we move on to another things, and it's like we're living snapshots rather than the movie of local government. And what I'm trying to do is to have a repository of a lot of things that we talk about, so you only have one big ring binder to go grab rather than 6 or 7 that are on your shelf, because I've been in all your offices and you have a lot of ring binders. I just need to have one of substance that represents what we talked about. The action plan elements for a development review process include, and I'll talk a lot about, because this is business and economic growth and it's got the word action in it, and we need to take a look at our development review process and add some predictability to it. We need to add efficiencies and friendliness to the whole interaction. We don't have to tell people, we don't have to give people what they're asking for, but I think we have to be very businesslike and professional in how we respond and not just say no. Give the reasons for it. I think we need to have date commitments. I just talked about starting what we start when we say we're going to start it and end it when we say we're going to end it. This is probably project related more than anything else, but I think we need to make sure that when we're working with the private sector, time is money to them. Let's just make sure that we stay on a track and a timeline that we all agree to. And then provide open communication. We need to make sure we understand all the projects that are proposed, take our comments seriously when we respond back, and make sure that whoever we're working with, they understand the process that we're following, so there's no misunderstanding. This is what we said we'd do, and this is how we said we'd do it. Other economic growth action plan items include explore the feasibility of attracting EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program allocations, and a little bit about the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program. Basically, it's for foreign nationals to come to the United States, and the purpose is for job creation and capital investment. They have to invest at least $500,000. The money has to be at risk, and they have to create, I believe, at least 10 jobs. But the important thing is we have such a diverse community with the university and with the college that I think we have a great opportunity for foreign investment in Alachua County. And if it comes in the area, and I've spoken about this before, I'm all about job creation. I'm not a real big happy proponent of just service level jobs. Yes, they're critical, but we want the value added jobs. And when I look at the Plan East Gainesville, let's build something. Let's be innovative with something. Service jobs are better than no jobs, but if we can bring a value-added job into the economy, I think that's what's going to be that rising tide that lifts all of our economic ships. One of the things that was discussed on the Business and Economic Growth Plan, Action Plan, and the chair and I were at a meeting last week with several staff, and they were talking about implementation. And I'm a firm believer that I think one of the best formulas for an advisory board is when each commissioner appoints his or her own representative, because that's truly a flavor of the commission thought process. So the policies should sound a lot like, at least in part, what you all are looking for. And we talked last week with the Chamber about establishing a task force in partnership with the Chamber and the Economic Development Advisory Committee to implement the board-approved Business and Economic Growth Action Plan. And I will advocate that when that comes forward. And Mr. Chair, I mentioned this briefly last week, and I believe they kind of talked about how the city did it, and I'm going to suggest that Alachua County has a better way to establish that, and we'll bring that forward with a policy recommendation. And then I absolutely, with the enterprise zone designation, who knows what the legislature is going to do this year, but if we don't get what we need, I think we go back in 2016 with an enterprise zone designation in unincorporated Alachua County. And I think the east side, specifically East Gainesville, has an opportunity there. And one of the things I don't believe we have is an industrial development authority to promote the attraction of light manufacturing to the area. I think that's something else that the board may want to have staffing brought back on. And finally, and I think, Mr. Chair, when you and Edgar and I get on a long plane flight to the left coast and then do an overnight red eye coming back because we're committed to being at the table, I absolutely think we need to, and I think I've heard this from Commissioner Cornell once or twice, I think we absolutely have to be at the table or we risk being on the menu, and I prefer the former rather than the latter. Moving on to human capital and what I call collaborative caring. It's an important component of what makes Alachua County great. However, we spent a little over 2 hours yesterday, and I've already sent a note of thanks to Susan Myers and her team. I thought it was an excellent report. I thank the Commission for bringing that forward, and I absolutely think that that's time well spent when you can get that far into the details on one specific department. So I will touch on these things, and I don't want my brevity to send the message that they're not important, because they're critically important to what makes Alachua County a great place to live, because we actually care about people and we have programs that support people. But the Community Support Services Department's been tasked by the board to target the following services for funding allocations. And I'm going to read the list: poverty reduction, homeless prevention and intervention, suicide and crisis intervention and prevention, rape and crime victim advocacy and counseling, veteran services, senior services, and health care for low-income individuals to include medical, dental, behavioral health, vision care, and pharmaceutical assistance. That's a lot. We do a lot, but I think Susan did an excellent job of explaining how her department breaks out those tasks. The Community Support Services Department has identified the following issues to address during the coming year: homelessness, continue our involvement in ensuring the success of Grace Marketplace Empowerment Center, and that is a work in progress. Choices, we've had a lot of discussion on choices. There's money there now, but I think we need to be planning for the future because you don't want to have too high of a burn rate, or all of a sudden programs that were built on a limited funding source all of a sudden are lacking a funding source. So I think that will be certainly a good discussion for the board to have as we enter the July budget workshop time frame. Mental health. The big challenge with mental health, and it goes with the homelessness, is quite frankly, and I've read different reports that show that half of the folks with a homeless situation have a mental health situation that needs to be addressed. We met a couple of weeks ago with some of my senior staff and with city manager and some of his senior staff, including former manager Baker, and they're looking for that what I consider the mental health triage that can take place in conjunction with officer friendly as we're encountering the homeless people, and to make sure that their needs, I think our officers are well trained, but I think to have, and right now Meridian's the only thing I can think of, but we need to have that, how that mental health component is injected into our review of our homelessness and the people that are homeless. So that's another topic for discussion, but like I said, this is an overview, and a lot of these things just need to be brought back to the board for thoughtful deliberation. A couple of things on the mental health, and I know at least one commissioner is working on this, but we're talking about crisis services partnerships. We're a member of the Mental Health Coalition, and folks that are hoping to coordinate these services, and among the projects of the coalition in coordination with the National Alliance for Mental Illness is an effort to diagram our current mental health network with its more than 100 providers and programs. And I truly believe that understanding the complexity of our system is the first step to making it more efficient and closing the gaps, and quite frankly the overlaps maybe in treatment. And I won't steal any thunder, but I know Commissioner Hutchinson's working on this, and I would hope that we'd receive a presentation at some point in the future on this, because I think the coordination is critical, and sometimes I think the role that the government that touches all people in Alachua County, and that is the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners, I think that's a leadership role that you take in coordination of those efforts. Then mental illness and homelessness, I've already touched on that. Court services has a say in some of this too, and through our diversion courts, the mental health court, drug court, veterans court, and the teen court, where people who qualify are given a lesser sentence by complying with a rigorous program of treatment, and the effect is substantially lowering rates of recidivism and greater integration within the community, and I think that's a goal that we can all embrace. And then the criminal justice, mental health, and substance abuse reinvestment grant program. Now I know why we say CJMSAG, because that's a lot to say at one time, but it's a broad-based coalition with about 10 different folks that deal with those mental health and substance abuse issues. If I can move from that area into infrastructure and capital improvements, maintaining our transportation infrastructure. This was the second item that we talked about in our December board retreat. I've challenged Assistant County Managers Harriet and Montgomery to find money within their departments so that we can apply it towards some prioritized road projects. But I'm not going to stand before you and tell you anything that there's a silver bullet or someone on a white horse is going to gallop to your rescue, because quite frankly, our road situation didn't happen overnight, and it won't be fixed overnight. But I think we have to have a plan, and I think we have to have an approach to stretching limited dollars. And I think we absolutely have to show the public that we're committed to doing everything we can to find those dollars, because I think that will help the Alachua County brand. I'm going to touch on some strategies for effective utilization of revenues and advocating, quite frankly, alternate funding sources. And quite frankly, we need to consider a different approach. Our current standards are well placed, developed by engineers, and they all have an appropriate location. But I can tell you, in past employment, I was responsible for getting folks together, and I've used this, I think, analogy with all of you. You know, we've all seen that 6-panel cartoon of the swing set built by committee, when all the customer really wanted was a tire hanging off a rope on a branch. It wasn't any fantastically expensive, over-engineered project. I'm not so sure that all of our roads have to be engineered for 25 or 30 years or even 20 years. I think if we're going to try and get ahead of our backlog of an overlay program, I think we need to take a look at a different standard. Right now, we're paying approximately $750 a 2-lane road mile. I think if we adopt an overlay standard where we do literally what I think of as a grinding go project, where you can grind, mix with some asphaltic material, maybe a little more granular aggregate, and roll it back down. They do it on a lot of roads, and I quite frankly, and I've talked to the Assistant County Manager for Public Works, who is also your county engineer, Jim Harriet, and we have an example plan that's in your backup. It's called Citizen Standards. That's what we're building these roads for. I think if I can get a 10 or a 12 or a 15-year road, and I can get it for $300,000 a 2-lane mile rather than $750, I've reduced my costs, and now I'm only paying 40% of what I used to pay a much larger number for. So I think this needs to be its own agenda item. I think we need to bring this forward. I quite frankly would recommend implementing a standard that will get us into an overlay program that will move much more quickly, because it would seem that if I'm cutting my costs from $750 to $300,000, time and material are going further. Maybe I can do twice or 2.5 times as many roads in the same amount of time. So I think this is something that we just need to have a public discussion on. With that being the case, we also have the concept of MSBUs, which are Municipal Services Benefit Units. I know you all know what they are. Just for the public's benefit, if I can just mention that revenue for services done in an MSBU area are non-ad valorem assessments that are equitably assessed on each property with the benefit within the benefit unit. Right now, MSBUs are an effective and fair method for the resurfacing of existing subdivision streets, which make up 16% of the county's pavement management backlog, because citizens directly benefiting from those services are the ones that are shouldering the expense. Also, there's the opportunity that you can, and it's a budget decision, it's a policy decision, increasing the MSTU for road capital maintenance. It's an appropriate funding source for countywide pavement management projects. You currently assess just over $500,000, which has a projected annual revenue of just under $2.3 million. Due to the state's restrictions on millage increases, you could, by supermajority, add another about 0.065 mils. That generate another $342,000. But quite frankly, if my house was on that road that you could pave a mile of for $300,000, I would appreciate every effort that the board took at looking at available resources. So I'm recommending that we at least have the policy discussion on that. There's also been a discussion in the past that I'm aware of. The board has discussed moving the rapid transit system, the RTS expenditures, which are, I think, $809,000 from the gas tax to the MSTU. I would just suggest that we revisit that, because any gas tax revenue freed up by that move could be applied to road resurfacing or other board priorities. And then another item that's absolutely worthy of discussion, I talked about it briefly earlier, but let me just hit it again, and that is a clean water stormwater assessment, or a fee. I know there's been some discussion in the past about it unfairly impacted agricultural properties. I'm going to suggest that we can work on that And we have, to the extent that I don't believe that's going to be the concern that it has been in the past. It does, I think, a modest $35 annual clean water stormwater fee could generate over $1.1 million annually. That money could be used to free up money for road resurfacing. It could be used to purchase sensitive lands adjacent to a road project. So I think it has a dual purpose, and I think it, quite frankly, I can see a stormwater or a clean water utility fee adequately servicing the board's two priorities from your December 2014 strategic planning workshop, and that is land and water and transportation. A couple of quick recommendations on capital improvement projects. We need to reactivate the county's, and we are this year, the capital improvement process. I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't be talking about expenses in a void. The CIP is a part of the budget process, and I quite frankly think we need to take a look at that in conjunction with the board's budget. Provide Wi-Fi to the Eastside Community Centers. Congratulations, commissioners. You have a signed agreement for 3 community centers with as a kind of a beta test, and I quite frankly think 4 more will come. We need to continue to talk to look for partnership opportunities with the Florida Lambda Rail Fiber Network. That high-speed opportunity is certainly something we should be reviewing. I've talked to you about a couple of priorities I'm going to have in the sustainability solar initiative area, and I'm going to be hopefully coming forward with a recommendation for a parking lot and a rooftop project. Update the building management system. That's actually a sustainability initiative to make sure that we're not spending electricity or non-renewable energy in an area in a manner that we shouldn't be. And I've given you a draft of the Downtown Space Needs Master Plan, and we also have the opportunity to possibly partner with the city and do a co-location of development review services to the GRU building, and that is obviously going to be a policy discussion at some point in the future. In public safety, and I'm going longer than I thought I would, Chief Northcutt 2 weeks ago did an exceptional job of really laying out a lot of the service needs. Now I realize that it focused at the end on lacrosse, but I think we've talked a lot about that. What he did not mention was the possibility of a fire assessment or a fee. I know this has been discussed by the commission in the past, and I would suggest that we be allowed to at least staff that particular initiative, because I quite frankly think a modest $25 fee could generate about $1 million. And you can do 2 things. If you're going to displace a millage, which is approximately 0.21 of a mil in the fire MSTU, you can do 2 things. You either use it for ad valorem tax relief, or it could be dedicated to critical fire equipment purchase, or a combination thereof. So the board would have an option with that. So I'm not saying spend it, and there are just options that are associated with that. Bringing it home to governance, and this is where a lot of my recommendations and thoughts have focused. You know, our citizens expect us to be both transparent and efficient, and I have the following internal recommendations that are proposed to achieve that goal. And if the board's amenable, possibly the manager can just implement them. Some probably because the manager could have been, and others would need to be brought back with appropriate staffing. But all departments, we're reviewing all commission, administration, budget, and human resources policies and this is being done by the department directors and the stakeholders. We absolutely have a lot of policies. I think, like I wanted to do with this, there's a lot of documents that I tried to put in one location. Similarly, in fact, the attorney and I are going over rules of engagement policies. We spent a brief period of time yesterday talking about facility rental and usage policies. We have, in geologic terms, it was brief. I mean, I don't think the continents moved hardly a millimeter in that time. We need to complete a comprehensive fee review for incorporation into the FY16 budget. So where appropriate, we just need to be looking at our fees. I think it's been a few years since we've talked about some of those. And we need to review our contracts with other governmental entities that are not in Alachua County's best interest or not the most effective use of tax dollars. And you'll know them when you see them. In the county manager's office, within 30 days, because I think it's only talk unless you put some time frames on it. So within 30 days, we have a new spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet-based issues tracking software. One of the first things I heard, probably my first 30 days, were the things that were falling through the cracks. And I hate sitting in that chair and wondering why something was talked about in August of last year and it's finally just coming forward. Or how some things, we've got a problem that's still ongoing of an environmental concern that we knew about 2 years ago. But it's not a complaint from your manager. It's a recognition of an opportunity to improve how we handle things, and that's what we intend to do. I recommend semi-annual board strategic planning retreats. We haven't done one since December, but the good news is every first Tuesday of every month now, you're having an afternoon policy discussion, and that's real time. I quite frankly think waiting for, once a month we can talk about those things, so I'm going to recommend that you do semi-annual meetings rather than quarterly. I will be collaborating with the county attorney to streamline and improve work processes related to legal necessities in the areas of workers' comp, infrastructure contracts, equal opportunity compliance, and interlocal agreements. We'll get this done within 6 months, right, Michelle? Reorganize to better serve citizens. This will be an outcome from the business plan development. So I would imagine that by the time we get into the FY budget year, we'll have those business plans completed and the board will have presentations on them. Advisory committee consolidation. This has already been a directive you gave to your manager. I'm just letting you know that I haven't forgotten it. Staff is currently evaluating the duties of the Board of Adjustment by seeking opportunities to reassign the limited number of application types currently reviewed by the Board of Adjustment to other boards or through an administrative permit process. And we will hope to have that done within 6 months. And improve parking access for employees. You know, I really feel that a manager has to present himself before all of his employees and take whatever questions they might have for you. Quite frankly, our employees that work downtown have to pay for parking, and employees that work somewhere else don't. Now, I'm not real happy that we lost our last few spots right now because I need that lunch wagon so that I can stop halfway from where I'm parking now, get a sandwich, and then continue my journey into the office. Being somewhat facetious, not entirely, and I intend to bring this up with the mayor and the city manager because people hardly have a place to park out here to do business with county government, and I think our brand deserves some parking. So that's a concern of mine, and quite frankly, I want to treat all my employees fairly. So maybe there are some other parking opportunities for them that we can arrange because I know there's surplus parking elsewhere. I want to continue our functional groups. I think it's good to have departments together. I will continue to work to break down the silos that, for one reason or other, may have developed over the not-so-great recession. I think people became a little retrenched. I think they're starting to realize that it's okay to work with everybody. And quite frankly, that's not an indictment. They do work well, but I just want to make sure I'm continually pressing the opportunity to bring folks together. And I do see a new functional group that really goes to the heart of what makes Alachua County great, the tourism, economic development, parks, and possibly extension service. I think this is a new functional work group that your administrative services director is leading, and I think there's a lot of collaborative opportunity there that's been missed in the past. We have not updated our ADA audit of county facilities since 1993. We're overdue. Jackie Chung's done a great job of keeping the feds at bay, but you know, we're working on it. Only works for so long. So we're working on it, and we will get it done. We use a construction manager process. I'm a big believer in the CM process, but I would take it a step further and make sure it's truly a CM at risk. I think if there are cost savings, I think they should accrue to the taxpayers. And I believe in value engineering, so we're going to review that process. I think it will give us better cost containment on our projects. I think it'll improve the quality of our facilities and our infrastructure projects. In human resources, would like to establish an employee incentive program for innovation. This almost started a year ago. It was brought to my attention. I believe it has merit. I would like to bring forward a policy. I know it's passed legal muster in other entities in Florida. I'd like to bring forth a no tobacco user hiring, tobacco use products hiring policy. It will help to drive down the basic expense that frustrates me in trying to control it. That is our healthcare cost. We need to be training. We do have an internal opportunity for training for our staff, because I'm concerned about all of the folks that I have on staff that are in the DROP program, and we need to prepare the next generation of workers so they can take over when we baby boomers retire in 15 or 20 years. We're working on e-learning programs. You don't always have to travel to do training. I think you can do that online, and I think that makes sense. In the ITS area, implement the New World system. It's a modern financial system, and I want to have that in place by FY17. And then some legacy hardware, whether it's eAgenda or GovMax. I am not entirely pleased with the Agenda software package that we have right now. There are better ones out there that I think would be much more beneficial for the edification of the policymakers to get the information before you that you need to make good policy decisions. We're right now reviewing all internal service funds. We want to make sure that our reserves are appropriate and are not well above where they need to be, and we do have that existing in some of our areas, fleet replacement, telephone service, gas tax, replacement areas. We'll do this within 60 days so that we'll have it before your FY16 budget deliberations. I have talked with the Chief Administrative Judge about this, and what stimulated the discussion was the fact that our budget was, our project costs were above budget for the Public Defender's Building. And the clerk will appreciate the fact that we need to build the building correctly. And quite frankly, a source of that money is the surtax on tickets. And it wouldn't be appropriate for the Chief Administrative Judge to bring this forward, but I will be advocating an increase in the surtax. It's at 15, it could go to 30. At 30, it would generate another $1 million a year, and quite frankly, that could help to cover some of the apparent but not long-lasting shortfall in the public defender's construction budget. And also, we want to absolutely work with a new financial software package that will improve the transparency and the accountability and the efficiency of our budget process, and we should be able to do that within 90 days. And now what you've all been waiting to hear, my concluding comments. Based on my early observations, and the changes that I'm recommending are absolutely more evolutionary rather than revolutionary. We're not broken. We just need to tighten some things up and maybe consolidate some of our policies. We've got an excellent organization in Alachua County that well serves the needs of our citizens. However, some of the changes outlined in this looking forward will make a great county even better. As mentioned earlier, this is an evolving, dynamic document which leads neatly into the broader budget discussion that is now upon us. This looking forward report has been a beneficial exercise for me and quite frankly for my staff, because it brings clarity and focus to our everyday operations and is, in my opinion, a process that should be repeated annually. This review will afford the Commission an early opportunity to what's the manager thinking about, because I'm responsible for bringing you a balanced budget. But you shouldn't have to anguish over that if you can have a say and provide early guidance to the manager when he is putting that budget together. And because of the many benefits that were afforded by the county organization in this endeavor, I'm going to recommend that the manager repeat this exercise every April so that we can have this discussion, so that you can get my thoughts, I can hear your thoughts, and I can tell you there's probably better than a half a dozen agenda items that I've already recommended that need to be staffed appropriately. This is just the appetizer. And then we'll bring these forward so you can get an early first look. And indeed, the Commissioners, remains my pleasure and honor to serve you and the county staff and the citizens of Alachua County, and I look forward to your feedback, your questions, not really your questions, and your comments. Mr. Chair, it's back to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Barley.
Well, first, thank you. This is a very thoughtful and comprehensive look at the issues confronting the county. It's exactly the kind of thing we need. So thanks for the work and effort you put into it. And I'm going to kind of speak functionally quickly about what we want to do with this. I think it would be helpful. Some of it is summary, some of it is kind of this is where we are, this is where we're going, and some of it is broken out into specific recommendations, and I want to follow up on those.
Yes, sir.
Because as you have pointed out, we have a lot of reports sitting on our shelves, and they sit there, and they sit there, and they sit there. I really want to stay focused on what is recommended for us to do. So maybe a meeting sooner rather than later that the board makes in order to go through your recommendations point by point and provide you some feedback and some thoughts about the things we're interested in pursuing, maybe some that we're not. Some of them are going to have some controversy associated with them. So maybe at the next available either standalone meeting or the next available informal meeting, we could have a agenda that consists solely of the specific recommendations that you're making on governance, the other issues, and we can go through them blow by blow and kind of have some discussion, because I really want to act upon this, and I appreciate the energy and enthusiasm you're bringing, and I want to capitalize on it as soon as possible. So if the board thinks that's a good idea, maybe we could have a standalone meeting to look at the recommendations that you're suggesting. Thank you again, and to all your staff who helped put this together, and I like the idea of making it an annual event.
Mr. Chair, if I could, that's what I was hoping to hear from the board. I will quantify everything, bring it forward, and the board will tell me what you want to have on a future agenda, and I'm very comfortable with that, if that's the board's direction.
Okay. Commissioner Hutchison.
I too think this is a great report, and I think it's you've done a remarkable job of encapsulating the issues that are in front of us. And what I've been impressed with is the willingness of staff to tell us the good news and the bad news, because there was a time not that long ago when county staff was reluctant to stand in front of the commission because they would be beaten up upon. And I think it's important for us to always reinforce that it's never we're never here to shoot the messenger. We're just trying to figure out how to get the message to improve with time. So to the extent that you can keep encouraging your staff to communicate directly with us through you or around you, either way, I think that helps us quite a bit, because you got some really smart people that are doing a great job. The other thing that strikes me is that we have not used as a community and as the Board of County Commissioners all of the financial tools in the toolbox, and your willingness to talk about fire assessment, stormwater fees, and MSBU's and so forth is needed and welcomed, because we've been frankly somewhat lazy in looking at all of those other options in the past, and they are controversial, and we need to do that in a way that is transparent as to what we're switching out for what when the money starts to flow, so that we all recognize where we're enhancing revenues, enhancing the bottom line, and when we're just moving things to the more appropriate funding source. Because I think we are clearly funding a lot of things that benefit relatively small groups of folks in ways that may not be fair to everybody. So to the extent that we can do that, I know that the discussion about impact fees, I was here for that the first time around, and that took a long time for this commission to get to the place where impact fees were doing their job. And same thing with gas tax. We ignored gas tax, optional gas tax, for years and years and years before this commission would bite the bullet. So we need to be willing to do that work, but you need to bring all of those funding sources to us. The other thing that you didn't mention that I think is important to talk about a little bit is that because we have new leadership at the school board, at the university, and here, the collaboration, little informal collaboration council you have with all those entities, because again, I think in the recent past, there's been a lot of each one of those organizations operating in a silo and not working together. And our meeting the other day with the school board was good, but it doesn't happen very often. And I thought that frank discussion with them was way overdue. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you're meeting with the university president and the school board and so forth, and where you hope that leads?
Mr. Chair, if I could, in response, two things. One, the school board meeting, I was talking with Dr. Roberts and Owen and I, because we're both new kids on the block, not much anymore, but and I think the chair was in the meeting, and I said, well, how often do you meet with the school board? Well, it has been apparently a long time. Commissioner Pinkerton, I think he told me it's been a while, as has happened in the past. And I'm not sure why. There's really two organizations that touch every citizen, or have the potential to touch every citizen. Certainly the premier organization would be Alachua County government. I don't care where you live, you're an Alachua County government customer. You may not have someone in the school system, but you're still touched by your tax bill. There was a lot of newness because Dr. Fox and Kent Fox and I have are developing a relationship, but we have a lot of major players, and it's a group. And to Commissioner Hutchinson's inquiry, wanted to wait until after this report to have our first meeting, and I talked to them, but I talked to Ed Jimenez, who is the president and CEO, or the CEO at Shands. The group also consists of John Carlson, who is the chairman of the chamber board, my counterpart at the city, Russ Blackburn, again, Jackson Sasser, president of the #1 college in the country, and along with Dr. Roberts, there are 7 folks that we will meet only when we need to meet, because we all have pretty busy schedules, and I wouldn't want to be the person that has to coordinate all 7 of us. But Mr. Jimenez said he would host the first meeting, which I anticipate will be next month. And we want to work, and I'm not sure why all of us haven't talked before. It's kind of like, why has it taken so long to just sit down with the school board? Regardless of what you thought the outcome of that meeting was, it took place. And if you're talking to folks, that's kind of like Commissioner Cornell and I have had this discussion. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu, and I think we need to be at the table for everything. And I think if you take all of that, with all due humility on my part, all of those other 6 major players in the greater Alachua County community and regionally, if we can focus on one thing to improve Alachua County, I think that brings a lot of horsepower to the table. So we'll be meeting, and of course now the paper's going to only write about that tomorrow, but we'll be meeting, because I absolutely think that, and they've all obviously agreed that just tell us when we need to be where. And I think citizens should expect that all of us are talking. So Commissioner Hutchison, I appreciate you. I didn't want to make it a part of the report because it was, we'd all agreed that we'd wait until Dr. Roberts took 162 days to do his 100-day report. I did mine in 147, so I'm going to suggest to Owen that I count better than the superintendent, and still not very well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Pinkerton.
And we can see the competitive juices are already flowing. So I want to thank you, but I want to thank everybody who contributed to the report. your own words were that most of the report was submitted by somebody else and you refined it, and so an awful lot of work went from a lot of people, and we can't tell the board, can't say thank you enough for the assessment at this point in time of where we are, and possible future scenarios for how we can make Alachua County better. I look forward to the meeting, that informal meeting that Commissioner Byerly alluded to, because I know it won't take more than 15 minutes as we hammer out all those details. And so I hopefully it'll happen sooner than later, so that we know what we're doing before we really get into the meat of the budget. So thank y'all very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, that's right on target. We have to have this policy direction discussion well before the budget.
Commissioner Cornell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too want to thank staff. Great job. Mr. Manager, thank you for providing pretty comprehensive. There's a lot of things in here, and unlike my fellow commissioners, I actually have a few questions. So I'm going to actually ask you to kind of help me with some of these things, and
Sure.
It won't take too long, but I just want to hear what your thoughts are when you say certain words, because you may say them and I may be thinking one thing, and I just want to make sure that for my benefit and also the public's that we're on the same page. So on page 6, sorry, guys, and it won't take long. It'll just be maybe 15 minutes, because I agree. The policy stuff is important, but I just want to understand what you're talking about.
Okay,
When we-
so it's 11:20, we can anticipate you being done by 11:35.
When 11:35, I think that's fair, depending on the length of the answers.
And don't forget, we're going to have a meeting where we discuss
Yeah, all
this
this.
specific.
Okay, so when you say department business plans, in 1 minute or less, explain what that means, format, and exactly what you're talking about.
Actually, I skipped over those, so I'm glad, because I saw my time running. I told my staff I wouldn't be up here more than 45 minutes, and I blew that by 15 minutes. But business plans are, and I want to make sure that I get this correct, because I know the paper will.
And this doesn't count towards my time.
Oh, yeah.
That was a motion, I think.
And it failed for
I don't
lack
have
of a
the power
second.
to do it either.
Well, let me just swing without a net. The part about business plans, and actually, I've got some different notes here. In my former position as county administrator, and probably after about my first year, I realized that we had a lot of overlapping services. And so what we need to do is benchmark, not only within the community, but also benchmark our peer counties to see what we're doing. Is that? Okay. We took a look at all of the processes. We break it down literally to the FTE component on decision units, so that how you deliver a certain type of service, and we drill that into what resources it takes. So it's truly a comprehensive business plan. It's pretty unusual in the government sector, but I quite frankly think I have some departments that they do a very good job, and I think there's a lot of overlap. I'm really happy that we have working groups that have similarities, so we're at least talking. But we need to break down into the component units of what we actually do and what those costs are. And then we need to be able to, and it has to be measurable so we can see if we're actually making progress. So I can give you an example of a business plan, because I quite frankly have a CD of a lot of different department business plans. So it's as detailed as it'll be a very lengthy document for each department.
And it'll start happening now for fiscal year 17. That's your thought.
Because if you're truly going to do a business plan, Mr. Chair, I don't want them rushed, because they become the basis for what we're going to do. And what I'll do, Mr. Chair, is I will send an email to all of the commissioners that will lay out all of the components so that we have it as a part of the public record.
Okay, and thank you. On the economic opportunities or the business and economic growth action plan, I just want to just kind of hear from you again, a minute or less. How is that going? Disseminating that throughout the community. What has been the reaction? I know Edgar's going to be speaking at the Builders Association tomorrow for lunch. Just for the public's benefit, a little bit of thought on that or comment on that.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that question because, quite frankly, this is, I've had this discussion with Edgar. I think the revised plan is excellent. I did speak to the commercial builders lunch, and I was not invited for the lunch tomorrow. Talking about the competitive juices, I think their speaker is a guy by the name of Kent Fox, and I don't know, I guess he charged less than I did. There was no charge. And I think you have to take the show on the road. I think it was Commissioner Byerly that made the comment that, yes, we do have a lot of plans on our shelves. Every time I talk about that plan, I emphasize the word action. It's an action plan. You've got to take the show on the road. We'll be presenting that plan at a chamber board meeting. Will be tomorrow, probably be next month. If you recall, because I think you were the one that maybe suggested it, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Cornell suggested when we were in Waldo. I offered to come back up with the business plan because there's a specific section that talks about Waldo. And I think the beauty of that plan is it's broken down into different areas of the county that are represented by our 9 municipalities. And quite frankly, I don't care where the jobs come.
Great. Thank you. And I assume that we are scheduling the other municipalities for presentations so to incorporate them and make them a part of that. And I appreciate that. This is for, I guess, my fellow board members. Have we ever done an industrial development authority that you guys are aware of? That's on page 13. That was something new to me. Could you give maybe a 30-second or I got some good time here, 45 seconds on what specifically you're talking about on that?
Well, you know, if you ask a fire assessment question, I'd have Chief Northcutt. If you ask about CJIM SAG, I would probably have Susan Myers come up and mesmerize you with her knowledge of that. But Edgar's in the room, and I'm going to have Edgar talk about the Industrial Development Authority.
It's a particular interest as we're talking about the fairgrounds, East Gainesville, economic development on the eastern part, and we have from the economic report a significant amount of available industrial space, and I know manufacturing is a huge.
It also gives you a bonding capacity too.
No, I'm on a time constraint, Edgar. So,
Mr. Chair, my name is Edgar Campo-Palafox, Economic Development Coordinator, and I will try to be really brief. Obviously, we could elaborate in a future meeting. An IDA was an idea that came of exploring what we have in our toolbox. As manager Niblock was saying, is just analyzing what we're doing and what we are not doing and seeing what areas we could actually start enhancing. In economic development, obviously, we did that in our action plan. The IDA specifically, at least to my memory, we haven't attempted that in Alachua County. I won't speak historically because I don't know, if maybe in the 80s or before, but at least in the recent history, we haven't attempted that. Several communities in Florida have those authorities, and mostly for bonding capacity, as manager was mentioning, but also other priorities could be attached. A specific geographic location, in this case, potentially East Gainesville might be a good choice, and some other things that could be layered, but the bonding capacity is the main one. Some counties around the state have started an IDA, and they function in actually a hybrid mode. It's not just the county driving, it's actually the community. It's kind of like the airport board here, where you have different entities working together, where you have city, county, and chamber, and different entities. One of the best examples that we found was actually Polk County. And Polk County has actually a high presence of manufacturing in the state. It's actually, very remarkable compared to the level of manufacturing that we have in the state of Florida, which that we are lower than the national level. Alachua County is even below the state level. So that was just mentioned as a tool for potentially start working together with the other partners to start bringing more manufacturing and promoting manufacturing.
okay, and I guess I would. Sure.
If you're about to move on to your next point,
I am.
We won't count this towards your time. I
Okay.
promise. It'll be my 30 seconds. Just briefly, bond what revenue stream in order to construct what? I still don't know what this thing is.
One of the tools that actually the IDA uses is currently used, and it's currently used in Alachua County, and we don't use it a lot. And Todd, is actually the expert on that, which is industrial revenue bond, and we have been using it for mostly nonprofits in the past, but in Polk County, they specifically use it for, besides that, also for promoting manufacturing. In the last probably 6 months, we have been actually bringing prospects to the county and talking about that tool. And Todd has been kind enough to actually help us and explain that the bond is not. And I will let Todd jump. If he needs to, doesn't go into the actually balance sheet from the county. It's a program that the actual company pays back and is their debt. So, we could go in further detail and actually brief you about that program. We currently have it in place, but the idea, what it will help us is to start marketing more that tool to actually
Tax exempt
manufacture.
bonds in certain areas.
Pledge government revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. It's really called conduit debt. So it is, while Alachua County Board of County Commissioners would in essence approve the debt issuance, the ultimate party responsible for repayment of the debt is the not the issuer actually, but the company that has contracted with the county and gone through the conduit debt process and the public hearings to issue that industrial development revenue bond. So it's been almost 10 years since those type of issues have come before the board. YMCA looked at it at one time to issue conduit debt in the past. We've had Santa Fe Retirement Village came before you back in 2007. I think that's the last one that you saw. But it's not Alachua County's debt. It's not debt that we issue.
So it would be used to construct manufacturing facilities, for example, and the advantages, there are tax advantages.
Correct. There's tax exempt or lowering interest costs to the company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just
Fowler.
the only other thing, Commissioner, I did not answer on the business plans, and it's really an obvious one, just to make the business plans make sure that their department efforts are in line with board priorities.
Clearly. Thank you.
If I could add just to this authority, I know it's taken away from your time, but in terms of the appointment of this authority, is the governor has an appointment to this for something local like this?
No,
He said an area.
I mean,
Mr. Chair.
who's going to be the members of the authority?
the commission appoints the members.
So just us. So we don't have to have a city official or University of Florida
Not
official.
in my experience, Mr. Chair, but again, if it's a concept that the board would like a white paper on, we can do that.
Yes.
Again, I just wanted to put some ideas out on the table. I think it's, as Commissioner Hutchinson said, we'll take a look at all avenues that we have available to us, and some will be a yes and some may be a no.
Okay, I know this is, I'm going to move on if that's okay. So I know this will be a significant discussion, but I do want to just ask this question on the citizen standard, on the changing how we potentially put asphalt down. In reading the Appendix H, it looks like this was adopted in September of 2009. And so my question, and you may not know this off the top of your head, but in 5 years, from 2009 to 2014, how did Marion County do as far as paving road miles? How many miles were paved under that standard that you?
Certainly dozens of miles. A lot of them were in our MSTU assessment program. We had a department specifically on based on MSTU and BU assessments. They did that work countywide, did all of the notifications and everything, worked closely with legal and the departments that had MSTUs or BUs. And they did their own construction projects, and they, quite frankly, sometimes you have 8 inches of compacted base, but 6 inches was fine as long as you're not talking heavy industrial truck traffic. Maybe there's a 2 or 2.5 inch lift of asphalt rather than maybe.
So this was all done internally. The Public Works actually did.
No, we utilized private sector contractors.
Okay. Okay.
But it was just a different engineered standard.
Understood. Yeah. So I would.
Not appropriate for every job, Mr. Chair, but I think on a case-by-case basis, the review has to be made.
Well, and I think in this case, we actually have 5 years of your personal history that if we could bring into that policy discussion, I would very much like to see how that worked. On moving along onto the capital improvements, and I guess we are going to have a facilities discussion, and so I'm interested in, and I appreciate that appendix. I'll go through that. I haven't had a chance to yet. I'll go through that.
That was handed to me 2 days ago.
Yeah, no, I understand. And
But I didn't want something to be discussed tomorrow that was a draft document and then stand before the board today and say, well, no, I'm not going to show it to you.
Yeah.
So it hasn't received my review, but it was thorough enough to be included in the report.
Yeah, so I think that's good. One of the things that struck me with the chief's presentation a couple weeks ago is really our fire capital needs. And I guess we can talk more later, but have we built into our CIP really what our fire and EMS station capital needs are? From a document that I reviewed that was only a year and a half old, it seemed like there was some pretty significant capital needs, and I don't know if they have been addressed in the last 2 years, but if not, then I would like that to be a discussion as we move into the budgeting cycle, because that leads right into your fire assessment, but I think we have significant capital needs as well.
Correct, and I can tell you, you use that county to the south of us, they had both a millage rate, which was .77 mils, and they also had a $165.99 per parcel fire assessment fee.
Okay.
And the good news, Mr. Chair, is we're now finally synchronizing the CIP process with the budget process. So it's all money, and
Yeah, which I think is good, and I obviously need that. I have many other circles and stars, but the big hand is almost on the 7, so I'm going to wrap up by just stating that in the human resources section, I would like to see some discussion of a living wage ordinance. There was an MGT study, and I think previous board direction in '06. I went back and watched a couple of meetings. I know our current chair actually recommended that at that strategic meeting. And I've gotten some information from Karen with regards to how many folks that would affect, and I think that should be on the discussion, especially in light of last week's employee meeting where 3 commissioners also brought it up. So I would add that into the report, and some major items that I think also I would like some thought given to is areas where the board is supplementing municipals. We've talked about this. We've had meetings about this. The Combined Communication Center is a prime example of that. I would like some thoughts into that moving into the budget cycle, as well as in this entire document, I didn't see much about the largest constitutional officer, the sheriff, and so I would like some discussions or some thoughts about what your thoughts are with that item as well, because I think those are some major items that are not here, but I know we've had a number of discussions about those. So.
Mr. Chair, if I could, you didn't see any reference, although Mr. Irby asked me to make sure that I mentioned that he should have whatever funding he needs. And then his voice dropped off, so I don't think he mentioned any of the other 4 constitutions. I may just not have heard that. However, I can tell you this was the organization that I'm responsible for, and none of the constitutional officers were mentioned on purpose.
Right, and I like the thoughts about the
but I like
the surcharge. From the standpoint of the constitutionals, with regards to how we are supplementing costs of the unincorporated folks are supplementing costs of folks that are in other cities and municipalities. And then I also think we need to have some thought in here about some potential unfunded mandates that may be coming down from Tallahassee. As this session winds down, there's some major potential budget impacts that I know we mentioned legislative in here, but I just want to kind of bring that out for the public's benefit, that those are additional costs that will be leading into the budget cycle.
And Mr.
So,
Chair, if
thank you for this report.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I spent a little time referencing what Commissioner Cornell talked about when I said that we needed to review the different contracts and agreements that we had with different organizations. It was a general statement. I don't disagree whatsoever with what you said. And also, I spent some time thanking the commission for being involved in the legislative process, because unfunded mandates are just that. And I want our fair share coming back to Alachua County. I don't want to be sending too much money to the folks that are a lot further away from the people that are being governed.
Okay, Commissioner Barley.
I'd like to make a motion.
Before you do that, could I give my comment?
Certainly.
Okay. Mr. Manager, I thank you for this report. And I like what you said, that you'd asked all departments to give a business plan. When I first came on, I was talking about strategic planning, and that's what I like to hear. But I see the business plans as sort of like strategic planning. So you know,
Sure, they will lead after the departments. Just so you know, I'll say this publicly.
Okay.
After they get done with business plans, the next year it will evolve, and they will do their own department 5-year strategic plan that aligns directly with what the board says are their strategic priorities. So they've just been given that early warning.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you talked about the December 2014 retreat we had. What I would like to see at some point is a status report of where we are with those initiatives. And even if it's quarterly or however you want to do it, but I think it's important for us to know as policymakers to know, have we reached that goal? How far are we away from reaching that goal? That kind of stuff. So to let us know, and if we reached it, then that's one off the list, and we can go. And when we have our next retreat, we'll know what other issues to look at, I guess I would say.
Point well taken, Mr. Chair. And one of the comments I made was reporting back to the board regularly on progress. And once we get into what I will call a more user-friendly agenda software package, I will recommend, I'll probably add in an area and the agenda called notation for record, where reports that need to be part of the public realm for transparency, we need to put reports in there where people can say, well, what about this? And then there needs to be a repository of reports and minutes from advisory boards and a lot of things that just need to be put on an official record. So, yes, sir. Is
Okay.
my response.
And the next thing I think should be important too. You talk about the MSBUs and the MSTU millage in terms of increasing those. I would like to, at least for the citizen side of it, to say why it's needed, and I think that that's more appropriate in terms of being transparent. We're actually telling the citizens why we need to do this. To get their buy-in, I believe, is more important than to say we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the things. You talk about a fire assessment fee. I rather give tax relief. If we're going to do a fire assessment of $25, I'd rather give some type of tax release to the taxpayer, other than to say that we're going to take that money and buy equipment. I don't think that goes over real well with some citizens. So.
That's 0.21 mil, and that's why I said that it's either can be used for ad valorem tax relief or equipment or a combination thereof. It's a policy statement, and anytime I advocate anything, it's just that it needs to be brought forward as an agenda item and discussed.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to wrap up my comments. I like the idea of the resurfacing, milling and resurfacing those roads that can be done. I think that's important. I know we went to High Springs, and the High Springs meeting, I think they said if long as we pave that portion in front of the school on, 236, I believe it was, that kind of solve some of the issues. If we could just do a mile of that in front of the school, I'm just saying that relieves some of the, I guess, tension in the community about that particular road, at least we'll do it gradually, but I think that eliminate the safety issues that came up that night. So
Mr. Chair, I
that
have-
type of thinking is pretty good, and I just wanted to say I sort of like that. That's a way of addressing some of the needs, and I think everybody is aware of our financial situation in Alachua County, and it's unfortunate that we've tried it 2 times and the citizens have said no to a transportation surtax. So, you know, and I don't know how long you keep beating them with it to get them to do it, but I'm not inclined to do that at this point. So, you know, so I just think that coming up with creative ways to address some of the backlog is important.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, that
and-
dog
and-
won't hunt anymore.
And then I also remember in the retreat, you had stated that some of the things they did in Marion County, that in terms of a new subdivision, they didn't immediately adopt those roads. And I would like to have that discussion at some point to know the pros and cons of that particular situation, because we could look at that or put it off in terms of adopting those roads immediately after a subdivision is done. So I'd like to know the pros and cons of that, if we can get into that, because
Mr. Chair, we'll bring back a thorough staffing, and I believe it was Commissioner Byerly has pointed out a couple of times that the backlog and Marion County was twice as much as ours. I must not have advised him correctly. It's 3 times as much as ours. So if that makes your story any better to tell, Commissioner, 3 times.
And one of the things, I'm not beating up on the medical examiner's office, but how do we control cost when we see an annual budget increase of $90,000? I mean, I don't know how we deal with that, but that becomes very important during a budget process, I think. How do you control a cost that's going to continue to escalate?
I'm going to have some suggestions on administration and maybe something we can do internally that can reduce our costs, because we all pay towards administration. We did it in Marion County, and that 15% administration cost, we took it as a credit towards our payment. We might want to talk about that. I don't want to give Susan a heart attack right now. She also mentioned yesterday, the first time that I had heard was that they may be not on schedule, and that 90,000 may not realize in FY16.
Yeah, but it's coming.
Oh, yeah.
Those in my comments, and thank you for the report, and I look forward to getting into more some of these suggestions during the budget talks. I know last year we didn't increase the MSTU, that we could have took bus route 75, I think it was, and we could have taken that revenue from that to put in toward roads. But I look to having that discussion as we get into the budget cycle this year too. So, and making sure that we raise the MSTU enough to accommodate that for the trim. So, think so. And Mike Barley, Commissioner Barley, has been talking about setting the millage a little higher, and if we would have been able to do that this budget cycle, but we didn't, so we kind of sort of kept it the same. Setting the MSTU, we have to set the millage for it, but we set it. I think we stayed constant, I believe, as it was the previous year, but we could have raised it, and it would have covered the cost of Route 75. But it was too late at that point, because we had already done the trim notice and all of that stuff. So when that discussion occurred, so
You can go out. You can go up. You can start high and lower.
lower,
But if you
but
lower,
lower,
go
you
up,
can't go up.
you have to.
Right. It's
it
been
costs
held
more.
out, and so that's where we were caught. So
It takes 3 or 4 months to get through the process.
Process.
Things happen, things come up. It's usually a good idea to just, for the sake of caution, set it high. You can always bring it down later.
yeah, and I saw the wisdom of that last cycle. So, all right, and thank you, Mr. Manager, for a report, and thank you, staff, for doing a very good job. I shouldn't say a well job, but a great job, and also looking out for the citizens of Alachua County. So, thank you,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Barley. Your motion.
First, a question. The Tuesday, May 5th, 10 a.m. meeting. And I'm looking at the 10 a.m. meeting, which is the continuity of government presentation, which I have sat through before. I'm pretty sure I know what that is. You did last time too. I don't think the rest of you were here for that.
I've been through it.
It's good information to have. It's probably not as time sensitive for county commissioners as maybe what we're dealing with this morning. So I guess maybe what I would ask, unless there's some compelling reason why we need to do that right away, is that we schedule that time slot for a discussion of the county manager's looking forward report in terms of its specific action items, just as bullet points, so that we can go through and discuss those and provide feedback.
What's on the 1:30, Mike? Because that discussion may very well continue on into the afternoon.
And it's our policy meeting, but it's also, I see it's being kind of edged into by the budget process. It says special meeting policy discussion / budget presentation. So it looks like staff are going to use that time slot to begin the budget discussions, which I guess I'm okay with. I hope the budget part comes second. But rather than eating into that.
This is a budget meeting. Mr. Chair, could the motion be that staff at next Tuesday's meeting brings dates, because that is actually a schedule for a budget discussion?
Which time slot are you talking about?
1:30?
Oh,
I'm talking about 10
Okay,
a.m.
very good.
And our calendars say that the 1:30 is policy, because that is our once-a-month time that we set aside, and I'm going to jealously guard that for the board to be able to just talk about what it wants to talk about. And I'd rather have all the budget meetings we need as separate meetings,
Good.
personally. But yes, I think you're right, Lee. I think once we start discussing this thing at 10 a.m., it'll continue into it, because there's some pretty substantive things for us to discuss, and our policy meetings are a perfect time to continue that discussion if need be.
Very good.
So anyway, my motion is that we agenda for the 10 a.m. Meeting on the 5th, a consideration of the action items included in the manager's report, and the second part of my motion is to thank him and the staff for their work and to receive the report.
got a motion and a second. Are there any further discussion to the motion? Commissioner Cornell?
Could the budget meeting be moved to the 5 o'clock time slot?
Doesn't matter to me.
Because that's reserved
Or a different day.
for a different day. Okay, yeah, I'm
Mr.
fine
Chair.
with, I'm
Well,
fine
I'm-
with either of those, whatever, but whatever the,
Whatever the pleasure of the board, Mr. Chair.
Well, as getting through the budget cycle, you haven't done it
Yep,
yet, but
that's right,
you,
that's what
you,
I'm
you, you watched it last year, to your credit. You came to a number of our meetings, but we always feel this crunch of time and staff is struggling. Can we set aside a second day of the week?
Thursdays, we've already done it.
Okay, but I'm not seeing it being utilized yet. So what I'm suggesting is, if the board will make available to staff a second day that works for all of us, where we can do all the budget stuff we need to, we can continue to do Tuesday as needed, but that's kind of set aside a budget day. That work for y'all? Is Thursday good for everybody? Thursday
Yeah,
PM? Thursday
Yeah,
PM?
that would be great, because I was going to say I have another job, unfortunately, but no, I shouldn't say unfortunately, because that's how I pay my bills. But anyway, it's when we go to those late meetings, that means my whole day of work is shot, and you guys go home, and then I have to go and work. So to 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So it's just
So you like more shorter meetings rather than fewer all day long?
all don't eat
I
all day
agree.
long.
I
Yeah,
totally agree with that. Now,
because you get burnt out, and I know I was burnt out yesterday.
so
But anyway,
So Thursday PM slots, is that good for staff in terms of all the budget staff? That's your time, so load us up. Okay, thank you.
okay. So, do we still need the motion, or
Yeah, the motion has to do with agending.
that 10 a.m.? Okay. Any further discussion to the looking forward for May 5th at 10 a.m.? Are there any?
Again, if we could just have a concise list of the specific action items you
We'll
want
be done.
for our use.
Any further discussion? Are there any citizen comments to the motion? Seeing none, hearing none, those in favor of the motion vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Mr. Chair.
Motion carried. Commissioner Pinkston.
the budget meetings, did we talk about a time? Did I hear a time? Well,
1:30.
I would hope that we would alternate between 10 and 1:30, because when we do the 1:30, the day is, there'll be relatively long meetings. If we start a meeting occasionally at 10, then we have some time afterwards to do things. So,
Occasionally at 10, I can live with.
well, alternate, 1:30, 10, 1:30, 10, 1:30, 10.
Mr. Chair, before you adjourn the meeting,
Yes.
I have just a quick comment whenever. it's
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Manager.
I just wanted to give you a little update on Lee and Connie Niblock. My wife started at University Law School in admissions 2.5 weeks ago, so happy to have her up here. I can't tell you what a distraction it is to have her somewhere else. And we have a contract on a home in Gainesville, so I'll be an even bigger taxpayer soon. And then one final item, I can't tell you how pleased I am in the comments that I heard that 1 week ago at this time, you all were serving food to some of your award-winning fine staff. All 5 of you were there. I understand that's a first in maybe ever, certainly in a long time. I thank you all for being there and challenged you all to make that a must attend. I think the employees really appreciated it. It's how you humble yourself and show your employees appreciation. Try and do that regularly. I was sitting with a commissioner having lunch at the very end, and another commissioner came up and said, "Great job, Mr. Manager. Good show. Oh, by the way, the barbecue sauce wasn't spicy enough." So in the great effort that I don't want that to appear that barbecue sauce wasn't spicy enough, I contacted Dr. Sanders at UF, and I have a bottle of gator sauce for each commissioner, so that if you find
I've got some of
Commissioner
this.
Hutchison that it's not spicy enough, you can actually have a bottle of sauce and light it up however you want to do that. And anyway, I don't want that to appear on my evaluation. Had to handle that while I could. And with that, Mr. Chairman, thank you all for your time and attention.
Are we allowed to accept gifts?
Not $100.
There were no taxpayer dollars expended in that gratuity.
All right, I just
Hey,
teasing.
we are not that easily bribed that a bottle of barbecue sauce is going to get you a better evaluation, okay?
Yeah, and I don't even know how it tastes.
It's hot. I've had it.
Wow. That begs the question the paper will ask, well, how much does a good evaluation cost?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hearing any further business, we adjourn.
Thank you.